TrumpCare, huh? Y'all think that's going to work really well? Mr. Trump, you sure seem to think it's an awesome idea. That it's just, the best thing since sliced bread. But, sir, you're an imbecile. You are probably the dumbest and the worst president I have ever witnessed. You are the biggest liar out of all the presidents that I have had the misfortune of having in my lifetime. Barack Obama had his share. Bush, oh my God, Bush and his lies still do not add up to you and what you want to do. George Bush's lies cost us about, what was it, almost 6,000 Americans and 100,000 civilians in Iraq. But you're looking at killing 20 plus million people. Or if nothing else, according to the AMA, 27,000 people in the next 10 years. For sure. That said, I have kept my mouth shut on this channel. I have not said anything about Donald Trump on this channel, really, since he won the election. I tried to give the man a chance. I wanted to give him time to get acclimated to Washington because he was a supposed outsider. I wanted to give him a chance because I'm not like other Democrats. I'm not like other political people out there. I try to even give Republicans a chance, even if I hate everything they stand for. I gave him a chance to be America's president, and Donald Trump, you're turning into the president of the 1%. At least our last president, President Barack Obama, at least showed some compassion and some empathy for those lower income and disabled Americans, which you want to just throw off of Medicare, Medicaid, and healthcare in general. The CBO says your TrumpCare plan that was passed recently by the U.S. Senate will kick 22 million people off of healthcare between Medicaid, Medicare, and the people that were getting subsidies on the exchange, which you want to reduce and basically end most of the subsidies for. I don't know how I can put this in terms that your dense brain can understand. I do not know. I do not know how to phrase this, how to put it, and how to express my anger with your lies. Your blatant, bold-faced lies. Mr. Trump, back in 2016, when you were running your stupid campaign, what did you say? What did you say? I will not cut Medicaid and I will not cut Medicare. Those are two promises you made. You're so worried about your ban against Islamic countries. And how that's a promise you made to your people and you've got to keep it. It's huge. But what about this promise? The promise that you would not cut Medicare or Medicaid. In the recent bill out of the Senate, which I'm sure you haven't read because you probably can't comprehend it anyway. But I'm sure you have not read it. Because if you had, I think you would have realized how bad of a bill it is. Because, like I said, it cuts 22 million people off of health care over the next 10 years and sooner. All to save roughly $371 billion over the same time period. Where do you get most of your savings, though? Medicare and Medicaid, and mostly Medicaid. But first off, let me talk about Medicare. Medicare is for the elderly, for the older people that have paid in to the system for years, decades even. These people have paid into this. You have no business cutting it. They paid into it. They should get their services, period. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. No questions asked. They paid into the system through their FICA taxes and their Medicare taxes and all that BS. And what are you going to do? You're going to try and cut their services so they don't get as much help as they need. Seniors have worked their entire lives, and many of them require or rely on Medicare to get them through, or Medicare, a mix between Medicare and Medicaid with the QMB. Mr. Trump, that takes me to my next point. The people that are on subsidies and on Obamacare and on the exchanges currently. So, over the course of the next few years, they're going to rise. The premiums for these people will rise, no matter what. There's nothing you can do, nothing Obama could have done, nothing anyone could do to keep the prices from going up. They are projected to go up through 2019. With a small, they were supposed to start leveling off in 2020. Now here's the point. That was already projected by the CBO in the past. That premiums would continue to rise and then they would stop. And they would start a slight balancing off, leveling off, or falling in roughly 2020, 2021. That was already projected. So you're really not, your little TrumpCare is not doing anything except saving $371 billion over 10 years, in which time people will lose Medicare, they will lose Medicaid, and they will lose their subsidies on the free market. Therefore, there are going to be children that can't get covered. There are going to be people with cancer who cannot get cancer treatments. And that's just talking about Medicare and the people getting subsidies on the exchanges. We haven't even got to the nitty-gritty of all this. We haven't even got to your other promise the promise that you would not touch Medicaid. So, here we are. Medicaid. You want to block grant Medicaid. That's what the bill says. The bill says that they would send a finite amount of money to the states to fund Medicaid. If the state runs out, where's the state going to get money? Oh, that's right. They're going to have to cut services on Medicaid. That's one. Two, from what I have read in the bill, if a state has an overrun in the Medicaid department, which the state has already had to go over and find a way to fund by either cutting down to what they needed it to, or by cutting other services in the state, like highway repair or fundings to hospitals or whatever else the state may have to fund. You want to cut it by an extra one. You want their next year. It says that they would be reduced. Their federal funding would be reduced by 1/4 of the overrun. That's just going to create a perpetual cycle until Medicaid just phases out and doesn't exist. I, as a disabled American, am deeply offended at what you're planning. I have muscular dystrophy Becker. It also compromises my immune system. So one untreated bout with bronchitis could turn into pneumonia and I'm dead. So Medicaid gets cut. The funding to the states is lower than the established funding before, and the states can't go back to the federal government and ask for more money if they've had an overrun, which the state can do now, if need be. They could ask for more if they needed it. So what's going to happen with block granting Medicaid? Well, the states are going to have to make budget cuts within the program. That means my care and other people's care is going to suffer. Yes, I need treatments for things like if I get bronchitis, I have to be treated immediately, or I could either be in the hospital, which is going to cost the state even more, or I die. And there are millions of other people out there just like me. We rely on Medicaid for our survival. Even some people that have full-time jobs and have full, and have college degrees have been left out in the cold when it comes to getting insurance, even under the ACA. But Mr. Trump, you are the biggest joke I have ever heard of in my life. The biggest joke I've ever seen. Ever since this Senate bill passed, I wake up every day thinking, is Donald Trump is the Donald Trump prank over? Is it done? And sadly, the answer I get back in my head is, of course not. He's here for 4 more years. All I can say is, if you're watching, if whoever's watching this video, if you're not disabled and you're sitting there saying, I'm crazy, do some research. Look up different diseases and see what that deals with, like muscular dystrophy. Neuromuscular disease in general is not fun to deal with. And if you have to fear that your health care may be in jeopardy, that adds a lot more stress to your life, to your daily life. And that stress leads to more muscle wasting and more health problems, and you get sick more often. You gotta go back to the doctor more often. This isn't a joke. My life is not a joke. My access to healthcare is a human fucking right. I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. Healthcare is a human right. I don't care if it's a civil right. I don't care what you want to call it. It is a human right. I should have access to healthcare just like anybody else. My Medicaid I may not be able to get to the best doctor in the world, and that's fine. But I should at least have access to a doctor. A doctor that I can actually communicate with without having to go to a community clinic every single time. Because do you know what happened to me when I was going to a community clinic? I got sicker than I came in. I'd go in for a checkup and I'd leave with the flu. Why? Because all the kids, they're sick, they're there, and I'm just there for an appointment. Because of my immune system being compromised as it is, I'm susceptible to anybody just coming by me, especially a child who doesn't know how to cover his mouth. So finally, I got another Medicaid doctor that's in a smaller clinic that doesn't see as many patients all the time. Therefore, I don't have to deal with getting sick when I go to the doctor. But this is pathetic. Us disabled Americans, we're not the drain on the country like some of your Republican compatriots, Mr. Trump, want to say. We are not what's bringing down this country. You are. Thank you.